from 1995 might not be able to read a document created yesterday. A program for today will be able to read, in most cases, a document created a long time ago, because they tend to design these things to be backwards compatible. Ultimately, there is a strong case, however, for attacking it from as many angles as possible, storing things as many means as possible. Additionally, I store and I advocate the storage of DNA archives, stem cell archives. I have numerous ones in numerous locations. Should I be blown to bits in an aeroplane crash and I cannot be cryopreserved, it is my intention for me to be either cloned with technology that's already existing, or have my replacement body printed. I don't know how many of you are aware, some of you probably are keeping an eye on this kind of field, but a organ printer has already been created recently. Only the prototype at this stage, and at this stage it's only doing very, very simple tissues, which they intend to test over a course of about 5 years. Right now it's doing skin and I think cardiovascular tubing. Then it plans to go on to slightly more complex things such as muscle tissue, other internal organs. Obviously we can already do spare part cloning. Bladders are easy enough. They've been done for a while. There was a boy recently in the UK who was grown a new trachea from stem cells that was implanted successfully. It was earlier this year. Gordon Brown, whatever you may think of him, pros and cons, he did vociferously defend stem cell research, and it's one of the reasons that has been embryonic stem cell research has been illegal in the UK when it's been illegal in a lot of countries. But that boy has his life to, he owes his thanks to that. So obviously the brain is probably the most ridiculously complex thing we have in our bodies, and probably the last thing that an organ printer will be able to print, but frankly we're already there with simple organs, so it's only a matter of time and resources.
But it wouldn't be your brain.
Yeah. Yes and no. Regards to cloning first, and I'll address organ printing secondly. Regards to cloning, there is the whole thing of, this is the same brush I've had for 20 years. It's had 3 new handles and 6 new heads. It's the same brush. Cells in the body replace themselves all the time. It used to be taught that the brain didn't do this, that you started with so many brain cells that died over the course of your life, and when they're all dead, so were you. This has relatively recently been discovered to be demonstrably not the case, and actually the brain will have completely replaced itself approximately once every couple of months. So, in terms of biological continuity, physical continuity, you're not the same person you were a couple of months ago.
Yes,
that's why the connections are so important, not only the neurons, but the patterns of activity.
Absolutely. And in terms of a lot of continuity of consciousness, if you fell asleep last night, then you lost continuity of consciousness there, and it's up to you to question for yourself philosophically whether you're the same person as you were yesterday as a result.
It's a myth because under general anaesthetic it disappears entirely. It's just a myth, isn't it?
So, again, some answers of these kind of questions are philosophical, and we don't know the answers. But there are reasonable reasons to think that continuity of consciousness shouldn't be tremendously important, and that physical continuity shouldn't be tremendously important. Obviously, I would much, much, much prefer to keep both. Basically, I have my plan A, which is not need cryonics, and I have my plan B, which is cryonics, and I have my plan C, which is cloning, my plan D, which is organ printing, and my plan E, that is mind uploading and later downloading into something else, whether it's purely software-based or biologically created or electronically created or whatever. And I will go on so on, so on, so on. Ultimately, I will do anything that I can to preserve what last vestiges of myself I can. And if all else fails, 1, I have a very interesting hobby while I'm alive, and 2, if I'm not able to preserve my own consciousness and it's just a replica later, well, I'll be delighted to inflict myself on the future and send that forward as a kind of legacy.
Can I
obviously I'd much rather continue living. Yes?
refocus this a bit? Because we're talking about life extension, commitment to life extension in general now, rather than cryonics specifically. And I think certainly for people watching this on the web, maybe people aren't inclined, maybe they don't have the desperate desire to do everything that they can. But if there was something that was presented to them that it was reasonable to think was a very plausible way to, in the near future, to have a total, very relatively reliable way to preserve themselves, which is what cryonics is very close to being, certainly, then that would make them far more interested than having 5 different plans and if all
Sure.
those life
Basically, the people have asked me what if, and I've explained my contingency plans.
that's quite fine. I just I want to refocus it on the question that Veronica asked about the neurobiology of it, because I think, well, there's 2 reasons that this is important to be clear about. One of them is because I think a lot of people generally are waiting for that to be explained to them as there's very convincing reasons why that side is going to work. The other reason is because medical professionals are waiting to understand for themselves that side of it really works. And when you get a substantial part of the medical community involved in this as part of the cryonics community, that's when you stand a chance of achieving a kind of critical mass as an activist movement, which is extremely important, I think. So if there's strong points that you can make to medical people, to neurobiologists, in explaining in their language the very convincing arguments or observations that they should think about why it's a very good idea, not just life extension, but cryonics specifically, and even the cryonics methods that we have available at the moment. Why it's very close. You don't need to rely on exotic future things. Obviously, to some extent you need to, but as conservatively as you can present it.
There's certainly a lot of medical research that has been done that the wider populace is not aware of, and even people in the field are not aware of. Now, in January, at one stage, I was at a conference, and one evening, there's a conversation between, amongst other people, myself, bearing in mind my involvement in cryonics, Rudy Hoffman, who is the leading insurance agent for cryonics in the United States, and has a long history of dealing with that side of things, and a very ardent cryonicist himself, and Chana de Wolf, who is a research scientist and herself also an ardent cryonicist. Some people may be familiar with the Depressed Metabolism blog. If not, Google it. It's very interesting. There's a lot of interesting papers on it. And a lot of people ask Ray Kurzweil, where's my flying car? These predictions are made and why hasn't it happened? And the flying car, I think it's been built now. I think it comes out next May or something like that. But Rudy has apparently been asking people for ages, where's my rat? When are you going to do this to a rat and bring it back to viability? And he asked Chana, where's my rat? And she said, Rudy, that was done decades ago. The papers are up on depressedmetabolism.com. And it was, I forget off the top of my head now whether it was the 50s or the 60s, but it was a substantial time ago that a rat was cryopreserved and brought back to viability. And I think it was probably euthanized afterwards or something like that, because that's what they do with lab animals when they're done with them. But the point is that it was never publicised. Not widely. The public consciousness never noticed it, and even people like myself and Rudy, with our interest in cryonics, hadn't come across it. And one of the things I try to do when I speak with media representatives, journalist press, or even when I'm speaking at events like this, is to help to get that kind of information out there, that actually we are remarkably close in a lot of ways. People think we're very, very far. In some ways we are quite far, but in some ways we're really close, and a lot closer than a lot of people realise.
So how do you relate the story of this rat to the question about the information in the brain, about the synapses and things?
Because
that might get
this rat worked afterwards. It was a working rat.
Yeah, exactly.
We didn't, they will not have had a chance